Yeah. Okay,
Okay, it's 5:30.
5:30 and we have.
Great. You want to go first?
Sure, we'll call to order this meeting of the Workforce Housing Committee. Can we do a quick roll call and then we'll go to
Sure. Hanairo,
here?
Roden,
Here.
Famularo,
Here.
Pickle,
Here.
Wolf,
Here.
Adams.
Here.
I believe that's everyone from Workforce Housing, and so that's quorum.
Great. I'll call to order the CDA for February 13th. Could I have a roll call?
Cole,
Here.
Lori, here, Nelson, Schaefer,
Here.
Sandoval, here, Wakely. Don't see Wakely yet. Oaks is absent and excused.
Okay, great. And we're going to postpone the approval of the minutes until our individual meetings. I suppose you guys can do that later in this meeting. For workforce housing, we'll do it next time we meet. So that takes us to agenda item number 1, discussion of tax increment district affordable housing extension and combining CDA and workforce housing committee. And I'd like to split this into 2 discussions. The first being the TID district or the TID affordable housing extension. We have talked about this quite a bit. Does anybody have any remaining questions about the use of the TID extension to pay for affordable housing in Middleton, the timeline, anything?
Same question to CDA, just consider that.
I don't see any raised. I think sounds like we've covered that extensively. So then we'll talk about consider it the merger of our 2 bodies. And of course, this all runs parallel to us developing together a plan for using that TID extension for workforce housing. But I think those 2 conversations can be intertwined. So just thinking about our timeline, we know that in April of this year, council will accept our recommendation to take that 1-year extension through a resolution that we'll be talking about later today. And that gives us until April of 2026, 12 months later, to come up with a plan and be ready to implement it right away. We don't have a limit of a year. In fact, I keep thinking this is something we've got to nail down. What is our time frame for spending the money? But it's certainly not a year. I know that.
I don't think it's closed at all.
Is it?
I think it's open.
Because
That's good.
I have discussions with the city administrator who would like it to not be spent.
Yep, sure.
So
Agreed. But that gives us until April of next year to come up with a plan. And we had talked about having the CDA members and the workforce housing members work together on smaller working groups, instead of meeting once a month for the next 12 months and trying to hash everything out here. We thought it would be best to have some members peel off into smaller working groups and address specific activities. It could be what the components of a program would be, all the funding sources, because in addition to our own TID money, there are other monies available that we might want to pursue. We might want to try to get some private funding from our business community. So partnerships might be another activity that people could undertake. And then just thinking again about the merger, that seems to me like the last thing to address, because that one we have more time to consider. This one, I really would like to be able to hit the ground running with something in May of next year after the funding becomes available, even if it's just a small part of our program. So I guess that's my pitch to think about and talk about tonight. How do we see the work of developing the program? How do we see that being divided up among our 2 groups? And what areas might interest people? Oh, and I left out the education part of it. I see education as being, or information and communication being an important task for the coming year, because we really need to make sure this program sells, not just to the council, because I think the council is already on board, but to make sure that the public is aware of what we're doing, the business community knows what we want to do, and we can have their support. So that's a part of what our two groups need to do. Going forward from April of 26, there will be, I hope, an education component to our affordable housing program, similar to what I know Sun Prairie, they've got, a really good website for information connected to the Tenant Resource Center. That's a separate type of education related activity. For the time being, I think information and communications is what I would call what we need to do related to launching our program. So thoughts?
Does it make sense to organize those work groups around some of the activities that we laid out in that earlier in the agenda? It's that November 2024 when it's
Is that the
buy,
buy
build, finance, refurbish, educate, that we could have kind of subgroups for that.
That could work. I think figuring out what subgroups to have should start with figuring out how many people do we have to work on them and what is everybody's bandwidth. So like if we can get all of us to turn out for a subcommittee, then we could have more subcommittees of 3 people, maybe 4 people. But if not, and I totally understand if people aren't available to commit to meeting, not just at our regular monthly meetings, but maybe once or twice in between meetings as we work out these plans. I understand if people aren't available to do that. No worries.
And CDA would be able to have 3 people in a working group, yeah?
Well, to avoid any issues with quorum, we would just notice all the meetings. As long as we post it on the website, we don't have to, we can appoint a subcommittee, and as long as we're posting an agenda on the website and making, having a meeting in a space like this where members of the public could attend if they want to, we don't have to worry about the quorum issue.
And taking minutes, right?
Mhm.
And making very clear, we're not taking a vote on
Right.
behalf of the committee.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so, but that's a good point. We need to make sure that what we do is compliant with our open meetings.
And they would all need to have a staff member present, I think, for access into the building, right?
Or an older person,
Okay.
somebody who's got a key. But that's assuming we would be meeting on weekends or at night, which may be the case, but maybe not.
Okay, if we did not do it that way and we did it where we limited the number of people per subgroup, does that then allow us to not have to publish the agenda and the meeting
Mhm.
and have it on Zoom, and
And then it's truly a work group.
then it's truly a work group? I don't care, but I think that people should know the 2 options.
Okay, so by next meeting, we can nail this down, what's required of us either way. And it could be that, the education piece, the information and communications, maybe that is just 3 people total. But working on the components, the buy, build, funding, partnerships, maybe that one of those would take more. We could, going back to Alan's point about the 5 elements, we could have one subcommittee just on the components and cover all of them. Because, and that might be, I can see advantages to both ways, doing them with separate work groups or doing it all together. Because if you had everybody discussing all the options for using our funding, those folks, I think, would naturally start to develop a sense of what might have the biggest bang for the buck. Like there wouldn't be, I don't want to say competition, but do you see what I mean? If you've worked on the revolving loan program piece, the finance piece, you're going to advocate for that. And if somebody else has worked on the buy piece, they're gonna be like, no, we need the money to buy, you know?
I hear you.
So if everybody's together weighing all of these options, I think that might produce a different outcome.
Or is there a sequence, right? Is it work first on the uses and then once figure out the what, then come more towards the how, like around the funding and partnerships and the education?
So maybe it is like whole group strategic sessions to determine what we
Or-
want to make our
Or it could be
priority.
size, or it could be subgroups on the uses, right? You could divide it. You could, different groups could, 2 or 3 could dive into each one and you can bring it together, right?
Other thoughts in the room or on Zoom? Alder Schaefer?
Yeah, at the council, we had a big discussion about various options we might try. And I think it might be good to still meet as a group to weigh through those options to see which of those seem more viable than others and then divide it down. I just think that, we had those discussions, but we didn't talk about what was the best use of any of those. So I would advocate that we still meet as a whole and try to wade through some of those various options and get some strengths and weaknesses, which is generally who's in favor of what, not the others.
Okay. And then divide into subgroups to further refine the ideas?
That's right. I mean, for example, we talked about loans, we talked about buying properties, et cetera. And so I think we ought to weigh what we think about each of those general schemes and then divide into groups. For each group, we'll look at what's possible within those little subgenres.
Mhm.
Just a thought.
Even though you've listed 5 activities, I could see them not having 5 work groups. It could be a smaller number because
Mhm.
under finance and refurbish, those are grant and loan programs. Buy and build are sort of naturally paired together.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then educate
Yeah.
will have to happen with regardless of what program we ended
Right.
up
Yeah.
doing. Which
Yeah,
is
and there may be
maybe
some
a
that you
later
say this is
conversation.
absolutely not worth looking at all. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yep, educate could come first because I think we all need to get educated on the options. So we could put together the kind of the educational program. The other 4 that are listed are really kind of more concrete strategies on how to create more workforce housing in Middleton. Whereas educate is kind of like, letting the community know, the problem that we have and that rents are too high. It's hard to get people to move here. Let people know what's going on in other communities, and then this opportunity that we have to make an improvement over the next several years. Just a thought on starting with educate.
Great. Anyone else on Zoom want to share? Or in the room?
I just like the idea of all we're meeting together and doing some strategic planning beforehand. And just personally, for me, I work in education for associations, and the communication and information pieces my day job. So I'm very willing to kind of help with that piece.
Good. I thought you might be about to say, so I don't want to do that.
Right.
No, I like doing it.
That's good. Awesome. Okay. I wanted to ask Abby and Daphne I wanted to ask about the cooperation agreement that's in this document or packet.
With Dane County.
Mm.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I just was wondering why that was in there.
Yeah, I carried that forward from a previous agenda, and the purpose was just because I want to make sure that with any changes to the ordinance for the CDA, that we are still cognizant that we are delegating some housing duties to Dane County. For example, if somebody calls me and they are looking for a unit, I would refer them to the Dane County Housing Authority because they have a waiting list for Section 8 vouchers and they know the available units. So I just included those documents in there because we were kind of going back through the history and trying to decide why it was that when the council created the CDA, they clearly said that they did not want the Community Development Authority in Middleton to become our housing agency. And looking back, it appears that it was because they wanted Dane County to still serve that purpose. We are also part of the Dane County Urban Consortium, which means that the city of Middleton does not receive community development block grant funding because we don't meet the population requirements and we don't meet the requirements for need. But Dane County receives an allocation of CDBG that covers the city of Middleton. And we can apply for that funding. We've actually submitted applications for Dane County CDBG and home before. So we want to continue to be part of that consortium as well.
Okay. I appreciate the background and that you included this in the packet. I too wondered why and when and how did council assign its housing authority to Dane County? I don't think this document is it. This document is about the grant funding that you just mentioned. And I know Sun Prairie and Monona and Verona are all part of the same consortium, but they have their CDAs manage how, do the housing piece.
Right.
So do you know what act it was of council that?
That limited the CDA's authority?
Yeah, I don't think our ordinances have that type of legislative history embedded in them.
I thought that we did find something in the vault here at City Hall when the CDA was created, that it clearly stated that it was not creating the CDA in Middleton as a housing authority.
Well, it says that in the ordinance,
In the ordinance,
but it's
okay.
not clear why.
Why,
Like,
okay.
Yeah, there's no like legislative history.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I was just curious.
I was just happy we had the actual agreements.
Yeah, no, that's good, yeah. Well, and I noticed these are 3-year agreements, and it's coming up for former Mayor Barr or Barr in their letter renewed it in 2022. So there should, I hope there's enough
Coming
this year. We'll see. Maybe it'll be a casualty of a certain so-called department. But yeah, I hope it isn't axed by the federal government. Who knows?
Are there specific things that the current proposal for the scope of the CDA are like conflict with that kind of delegation? Because like I think referring them for vouchers in Section 8 and even giving the county some of our money doesn't sound like it would be contrary to what we want to do as far as development and gap financing. It's not strictly like a housing authority, but a development fund for affordable units here.
Yeah, I can't think of any conflicts. I mean, they're really good partners with the city. We regularly interact with their staff and refer people there. So no, I just don't see any conflicts.
And I think if anything, it might help us constrain our scope to something manageable that we can be more focused with.
And then be reliant on them as the partner of the housing authority to
Yeah.
identify people that may be in need of housing, whether we develop or the grants, or
Yeah.
also be able to help with outreach to that population.
Yeah, I mean, part of this, the strategy and the proposals is to make that compatible with countywide efforts for affordability across the county. And this is kind of like our part.
So we can ask our city attorney about any conflicts between, or what do we need to know about specifically the housing authority in state statutes to make sure that
Yeah.
we understand what we would be saying if we were to recommend changing our ordinance to drop paragraph 4 about the CDA shall not exercise the powers of the housing authority.
If not being a housing authority means.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So that-
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. I wanted to ask specifically about page 17. Gotta go there and figure out what it means. Oh, yeah, it is
Resolution.
page 5 of 5. Page 17 in the packet is page 5 of 5, signed by former Mayor Dan Ramsey, and I didn't know, was this like the first amendment? You see the line numbering starts at 181, but we don't have whatever came before, so I was just curious.
I don't know.
Okay.
I will have to
Fair
go
enough.
back and look at that and figure that out.
Can you ask your question again, Lisa?
Well, if you scroll through the
Well, I
document,
think
I
we just
see.
missed the line numbers on page 16. Or page 12 of 19.
so that, yeah, that says page 3 of 5. And then there's this Joe Parisi signature document, and then it goes on to 5 of 5.
Right, and
Maybe that's supposed to be 4 of 5, and there is no.
no, it looks like something's missing because there's no number 1, right? So at the top of page 5 of 5, it says number 2 municipality, number 3 program income, and any of the pages above that does not have a number 1.
I see.
So page missing perhaps, but because it
Yeah,
ends at
because
135 and
the-
starts at 181, so their pages are missing.
Page 11 goes up to line 135.
Yep.
And it starts again at 181.
So if you can track down whatever that page was. It could have just been out of order. It's not like it's a every other or two-sided copy page thing. Okay. We don't know whether it's continuing. It seems like these are dated in June of the year, so I hope sometime soon the mayor will be getting something. And then if everyone could think about before our next joint meeting, your interest in serving on different working groups. After we nail down the committee and the CDA preferences for the 5 options. Are we ready to move on to the resolution?
Certainly. Do we just want to check, do a straw poll on that now, so you got a sense of that?
A
Of
straw
people-
poll.
of people's willingness to participate?
Oh, sure. Raise your hand, I guess, if you're interested in serving on a working group related to fleshing out ideas for the program. It's like,
Make sure.
and I know Alder Schaefer's hand is up. Okay, so we have quite a few people. That's good. Oh, there's Amy. Hi. Thank you. All right.
There we go.
That's it. Oh, so we've got that. And thank you, everyone, for your willingness. We'll talk more next time about what those groups might look like. Okay, so do you want to move on to the resolution itself?
Yeah, I'm recommending approval of resolution 2025-12. Resolution for the city of Middleton tax incremental district number 3, affordable housing extension. We have the draft.
Do we know this is going to be 2025-12, or have we already passed that?
We got
You
that
just say that.
assigned.
Okay, great. Well, you see the red wording in there. Those are just suggestions I had made. We do need to adopt the termination resolution by April 15th of 26. It'll actually be April 7th because that's the day of the council meeting before the 15th, but the 15th is the date.
That it has to be done.
Yeah.
It has to be done, yeah.
Yeah.
So the resolution will say it
Yep.
April 7th.
And then the paragraph, the be it further resolved paragraph, I just suggested rewording it because we're not really asking CDA to work with the regional housing strategy. We just want the plan, whatever it is, to be consistent with the regional housing strategy. And actually, I wondered if we should change requesting to directing the CDA to work with workforce housing over the next 12 months to develop a plan. Because requesting, we probably took this from the template or from somebody else, but it just seemed kind of weak. We're gonna, and it doesn't really make sense. We're gonna improve housing by requesting that these guys work together. More like, no.
Do you
they
feel like
do
being
it.
directed or requested?
They need to do it. We need to come up with a plan.
No, I think, yeah, I think directing, or, yeah, direction,
Okay.
yes, that expectation setting.
Mhm.
Because we've actually made the recommendation that we're doing this to them. So council needs to direct us,
Yeah.
approve this recommendation and that and I agree that it should include workforce housing.
Mhm.
Because we have already decided that we're not yet combining, but we're on a path to that combination,
Yep.
so. And as this unfolds, we may have to.
Yeah.
There may be things that need to be revisited about that
Yep.
and or do we repurpose workforce housing in some way? Like, what does that look like? So there may still need to be a separate body.
Is there advantage or disadvantage to say direct the CDA and workforce housing to develop a plan versus develop CDA to work with?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there is an
Sounds
advantage
good.
of that.
Right. Are we just getting off the hook? I just blew it.
No.
Yeah, yeah. We are a requester. You're just requesting.
Yeah, we're requested, CDA's directed. No, I like that suggestion.
You could do a vote for any of that.
If Daphne can show us are you able to show us the revised text?
I don't have
Maybe
that
just
right now.
For the resolve section.
Yeah, I can type it up real quick.
Who's got the original Word document?
I should have it somewhere.
I can pull it up, Dash.
Okay,
If you want me.
yeah, if you-
Where, is it in a PC or,
I think it was under workforce housing.
okay.
And this resolution, once it's,
Maybe if I could just say, be it further resolved, the city of Middleton shall use the final increment to improve housing quality and affordability by directing the CDA and workforce housing committee over the next 12 months to develop a plan consistent with Dane County's regional housing strategy and utilize at least blah, blah, blah.
is that your motion?
I think so.
All right, so we have a motion to go ahead and
Sure.
to approve
Sure, yeah.
to approve the resolution or recommend the council approve the resolution
With modified language.
with the modified language in that resolved clause and the corrected date. And then just for and I'll second that motion for workforce housing.
Vote on that first.
Okay. And just so the committees know,
Stop sharing.
Alder Nelson and Schaefer and I can take this to council and the date, that's an X right now on the thing, that'll be it will be the 15th this year, I think. So we won't take it sooner than that, even if we agree it's good to go, because we need it to,
Be a year
yep,
out from.
we've got the timeline worked out. Get that.
Be consistent with Dane County.
Oh, yeah, consistent with Dane County's regional housing strategy. Okay, so Workforce Housing Committee members, that's the motion on the table is to recommend that council approve resolution 2025-12 for the City of Middleton Tax Increment District Number 3 Affordable Housing Extension with the wording in the be it further resolved clause as shown on the screen. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the
This is just
motion
work-
signify by saying aye. This is just workforce housing.
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it for workforce housing.
Oh, entertaining a motion from CDA to approve this wording.
I will move. I will make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Any other discussion from CDA? If not, all in favor of accepting the be it further resolved section of resolution 2025-12 as seen on the screen and as edited, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Do you need a motion to recommend this to council? Or was that the intent?
I assume that was the intent
I
since
thought that was.
this body
Yeah,
doesn't have
okay.
the.
That was recommended with these edits, yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so that's good. Like I said, we'll make sure this is on the council agenda for the April 15th meeting. And our last item is to discuss our joint meeting, well, last item for our joint meeting, you guys get to continue, is to discuss the joint meeting schedule. I noticed you all meet on the second Thursday and we meet on the third Monday. And in a situation like this, that works out just a few days off. So we're real close to each other on the schedule. Do we want to, I think we should meet together in March. Do we want to do it on I mean, I'll let you all decide what works for you because my schedule is thankfully really, really flexible.
I just have Parks Committee on the first and third Mondays,
What time does that
7.
7? Oh, we would be done because our meeting is at 5:30. Thoughts with the St. Patrick's Day? Maybe next month isn't the best time.
So the 13th might be the
Yeah,
best
the
for
13th
March.
Might be better. I mean, I again, don't need to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, but I know a lot of people do.
And then the 21st is Easter, in April is Easter Monday, so that is a problem. Or is it, you said third Monday?
We meet the third Monday.
Third, yeah, so Easter Monday might be a problem for some folks.
Workforce housing members, how do you feel if we have our next meeting? Well, let me ask the staff this. If we wanted to meet on the 13th, can we make sure that we also have the council chambers?
Yeah.
So that if workforce housing decides we want to continue our meeting afterwards, we have the space to do it?
I'm pretty sure we can.
Are the members available on the 13th of March?
I'm available.
Okay,
5:30.
5:30? Any work, I only see a few workforce, or I only see a few people on the screen just because, yeah, thank you. Is Amy or Crystal? do you
I'm
have a
good, 13th.
conflict? Okay,
No
good.
conflicts.
All right, so that'll work for us if you want to meet then.
Great, we'd love to have you.
And then we'll decide then if,
For the next one.
yep, for the next one. And then in terms of action items, before the First Housing Committee adjourns, I'll check with Matt Fleming about the options for dividing into work groups. What are the requirements for noticing and quorum and staff needed? And I will also ask him about any conflicts between our ordinance well, between what a housing authority does under state statute and what we're thinking of. And Abby, you already said there's no time limit for us to spend funds, so I'm gonna cross that off. Did I miss any? And everyone's gonna think about what they want to work on. All right, is there anything else we need to discuss jointly? If not, the Workforce Housing Committee has reached the end of its agenda, and so we are adjourned.
Thank you so much for coming,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Workforce Housing.
Thanks.
I will figure out the price. Bye, everyone.
No, right here. Okay, so if you want, I can shut it down. Yeah, and then that way you don't have to stay. Thank you.
All right, CDA still with us.
Yep, CDA will stay on.
We're gonna move, excuse me, we're gonna move on to discussion number 4. Discussion of future for Pride events at Stonehorse Green, June of 2025.
To give an update on that.
Yeah, we had a meeting of the Pride event group, and we do have a couple of dates with, I think it's June 21st.
I just told,
Where did
they were in
this-
an email, but I just saw, it was the
Yeah.
15th.
And the 28th.
14th or the 20th.
28 is the priority, the 14th is.
28th is the priority, and 14th is the backup. But our, so we want to get on the schedule for that, but our biggest discussion point is whether we can be included as a city event through the CDA so that we can have insurance for the event.
And I can just give an update on the city's insurance coverage for events. Right now, we don't purchase any special event coverage for any city events. We have a policy with SIPMIC, which is the Cities and Villages Mutual Insurance Company, and we are covered for liability under $50,000 with our self-insured retention. So if an event happens and the city is liable, we have to pay the first $50,000 out of pocket, and beyond that, it would be covered. Our finance director, Bill Burns, is the liaison with CIVMIC, and he said that outside groups that are hosting events on city property are they're required to get an insurance policy, which is part of the special event permitting process. Special events are required, special event permits are required for any events that have over 200 people or require a road closure. So that is, if an outside group is hosting an event on city space, that's what we would require. He did not think that getting additional special event coverage would be very expensive for the city if we were to take this on as a city event. We could also take this on as a city event potentially and not go out and get special coverage and just rely on the self-insured retention. He did say that our insurance provider is looking at an option where a city that is a member of their group can list an entire year of events and kind of what is expected from each of the events. And then they can quote us for additional event coverage for a full year. I don't know if they've rolled that out just yet, but I know that our communications manager was working with all the department heads to try to get a calendar going. And he has developed a calendar for any events that the city is hosting that where we expect to have more than 75 people. One thing that is excluded from any event that can be on city land is fireworks and bounce houses, because CIVMIC will not cover any events that have those two things. And I don't think either one of those applies to the Pride event. And so I think I have no concerns with this becoming a city event. But I would like to make sure that it's very clear which things are gonna be the responsibility of the committee to organize versus city staff. That is really my only concern, is I just wanna make sure that the expectations are very clear. We have a really small staff here. We are in the process of hiring a new staff person, which will give us an additional half-time capacity. And that's the placemaking planner position, and I would envision that person being the primary point person with the Pride Planning Committee. So I think it's just up to the CDA to decide whether this is a city event, in which case we would not require any special coverage. And we would probably end up being the applicant for the special event permit.
Okay.
Like you do for other events at Stonehorse Green, correct? This just follows suit with those?
Yes, except that we only get a special event permit if we are closing the street. So otherwise, we don't require a special event permit because we have a year-long amplified sound permit, but we do get a special event permit, for example, for the Art Walk, which is a city organized event.
Because of the street closure.
Yes.
So if planning this year includes not closing a street, then it would just be handled like any Stonehorse Green.
If it is held on a day that's already covered by our amplified sound permit, then I think, yeah, I don't think it would necessitate a special event permit.
I feel like with what we want Stonehorse to become, this insurance where you're getting one policy and it covers all your events for the year, it just seems like the smartest thing to do. Instead of having to go back each time. And I think at least this little subcommittee, if you wanted, this ad hoc committee, if you want to call it that, if the city's okay with it, we would like to say that we've got this and we don't require a staff person unless it's required from you guys.
Well, if you want to access sound, if you want to organize it as a city event, it probably would be good to have a staff person.
So the placemaking staffer
Yep.
is now replacing the previous contract of, so we worked with the city's contractor.
Yes.
Who ran the events at Stonehorse Green. So there was coordination with city staff in that they were
Oh,
a
I see.
contractor of the
Yes,
city.
they were. Yep.
So there was that
So we'll
level.
have that person.
Right, yeah, the position that we're hiring will take the place of that half-time contracted position and will instead be a full-time staff person.
And will that person be hired before June?
Yes. Yeah, we're interviewing on Friday next week.
That's exciting.
Mhm.
And so that person would attend our meetings.
That person is likely to become the staff person for the Public Arts Committee.
Gotcha.
And if one of the things that with this whole discussion of combining CDA or merging CDA and workforce housing, one thing that has been floated
Yes.
is the idea that the event portion of the CDA's purview would actually move over to the Arts Committee, and they would potentially become the placemaking committee instead.
So it would be a modification of it would be arts and events potentially.
Yes, and also possibly even the landscaping contract for the city's streetscaping in downtown. But that remains to be determined, and that hasn't been discussed yet with the Arts Committee, so I don't want to overpromise what
It has
their
not.
role
Right.
will become.
Okay, so what action can we take tonight to move this forward?
I think you could determine that the Pride event is a city event that would be covered through the city's insurance coverage.
Kelly, you have your hand up. I'm sorry if I wait too long.
Oh, that's fine. I was wondering if there are any disadvantages to this being a city event in terms of what is allowed to happen at the event or anything like that.
That's a good question. I will say I did not attend the event last year because I was out of town when it was held. And so I don't really have a real good flavor for the event as a whole. But just in terms of things that we would not allow at Stonehorse Green, we would not allow any signage, especially political signage, would not be allowed because it's city public space. We, if there are vendors that are selling things, they need to go through any additional permitting requirements that the city has. This would be true whether or not it's a city-sponsored event. I'm just explaining, like, I wasn't at the event, so I don't know exactly the extent of it. I'm trying to think if there's anything that would differentiate it based on whether it's private or I mean, I can't really think of any rules that would be different whether it's a city partnership or if it's a city event. I can't really, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, Kelly.
Okay, yeah, I was there last year and it's there were vendors, sort of booths, but it was very, family friendly event and not political at that time, so I don't see an issue there.
Good.
Shown either, there was a tent for Fair Wisconsin, there was a tent for Middleton Democrats, and they were signing people up to vote. Those kinds of things would be not allowed.
So Fair Wisconsin, I don't see any issues there. The Democrats, I don't know about that. We might have to ask our city attorney. I think if we allowed it for one political party, we probably at the very least have to allow it for both.
Mhm.
I know that's what Madison Pride did. They ended up extending the invitation to both and then only one came.
So
Okay.
nonpartisan,
Political.
voter registration
Voter
would be allowed.
Like the legal
But-
on the table.
yeah.
Legal voters, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Talking about
501c3s that,
politics.
or their advocacy arm that are nonpartisan.
I think that would be fine. Yeah, absolutely.
So then we would
Perfect.
maybe like it's open to both parties or the committee decides that just neither party, like
Okay.
neither, like no political party representation, but get out the vote efforts would be okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, but that would be,
Yeah, that'd be a way to do it. I think would.
If it's a city event, is the city then responsible for like safety and security?
So even for our city events, we have to, if we need additional police support, we typically cover the cost of that because it's almost always overtime costs because they still get the same patrol hours. So I think that would not change. One of the things that I have been talking with our public works department about for actually another event that's being considered at the same space in December that potentially could attract 20,000 people is that we might want to look at having the trucks for a road closure instead of just
Yeah.
using the barricades, that we might actually want to see if the public works department can station trucks at the road intersections by the road closures. And that is what we did with the Good Neighbor Festival parade, where our public works department actually dropped like their plow trucks, their heavy duty trucks at all the intersections. And I don't know if there would be a cost for that. This time of year, they're not plowing, and I don't know about like brush collection and whatever else they use the trucks for. So I could look into that and see if that could be a possibility too.
the idea that the barricades are not enough to stop potential traffic from coming through.
Yeah, the bollards, we have screw-in yellow reflective bollards that we can screw in to close that section of the road. We actually don't close it at the Elmwood side because it's a one-way street. But if somebody were intentionally wanting to drive onto that street, they would probably be able to make it past the barricades. but our public works director tells me they would not make it past one of the big city trucks. So, I mean, they could, there's maybe space on either side, like, it's sad that we have to worry about those things these days, but it might be something that we would want to consider.
So I'm gonna entertain a motion to turn this into a city event.
I will move.
Do I have a second?
I can second.
Thank you, Quinn. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of turning the Pride event at Stone Horse Green into a city event, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. On to the recommendation for approval of contract for summer and winter planters with designs by Zamira.
Yes, so last year the CDA decided to change up the contract for the downtown planters that we have, and we have been working with Zamira Lumani, which is a small business. Zamira and her husband also own Sofra, which is on Elmwood Avenue. And they have been handling the planters. I think that she has done a really good job. We got a lot of positive feedback. We had a couple of people stop in to City Hall and ask us about certain plants that were in the planter, which was kind of fun because I didn't know the answer to their question, but I was like, if you go over to Sofra, you can ask and she'll be able to answer. So I think that it's gone very well. One of the things that we were asked by a property owner in downtown is whether we would consider doing something in the gap season between when we take the summer plants out and put the winter decorations in. And so we asked Zamira to include a price for fall decorations, and we had hoped that by not having her doing as much of the watering, because our parks crew was going to be able to step up and help out with that, that we would have enough money in the budget that we could swing the fall as well. But at this point in time, we cannot afford that within the current budget. So if you look at the cost for the summer, which is $22,540, and the winter, which is $9,450, that's a total of $31,990, which is about $3,000 less than what we have allocated. So we have like a $3,000 buffer, but we don't really have nearly enough to consider fall at this time. So what we are recommending is that we just continue with summer and winter. And if we decide we want to do fall in a future year, we could increase the line item in the budget and maybe just target certain areas, like maybe just Parmenter Street or, just the more traffic areas. We could look at doing that.
Do you remember how much the Bruce Company was charging us for these?
I don't know exactly, but I know that when Zamira's bid came in last year, it was like almost the exact same amount. So it's pretty,
And so much more creative.
it's pretty comparable. to
Yeah,
What we're spending.
I guess my only request would be, I really liked all the different things she had, but if there could be, and maybe this is just me, if there was like a consistent something that a thread that went through, even though some of the plants changed, maybe something is the consistent thread. Like one base plant or something,
So some uniformity to how
a
things.
little bit of uniformity, yeah,
Okay.
from one planter to the next.
Okay.
And maybe that just has to be consistent on one street, and then on another street, the consistency is a different thing. it's not anything that great. So if that doesn't happen, it's not gonna bother me. I thought she was really creative.
Okay. Any other feedback on the planter contract?
I just heard really good feedback too, just from talking to people in the community, especially the winter decorations. I had friends with, do you know who's doing the winter? Like, those are really cool. So,
Oh, right.
yeah, it's exciting.
Different.
Yeah.
All right, anyone wanna turn this into a motion?
To approve the bid,
To approve
sorry.
the bid?
Yeah, go for it. Yes, I will move to approve this bid.
A second.
Thank you, Quinn. Any other discussion on this? If not, all in favor of approving the contract for summer and winter planters with designs by Zamira, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Let's go back to catch the minutes from
Mm.
the January 9th meeting. Does anyone have any corrections, questions for the meeting minutes from January 9th? Hearing none. Those minutes are approved, and that is the end of our agenda. And meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Sorry
Thanks.
about my voice. It'll be better next time.
Thanks, everybody.